I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is Our Nerdiest Thing.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we are continuing our discussion of Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. We'll be talking about chapters 6 through 9. And please check the trigger warnings with this book. Heavy topics, vigilante, serial, unaliver, main characters. There's
whole page of triggers.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Eye ripper outers and blood and
pluckers.
orzo pasta and all that.
There's lots of triggers, but you guys, this book is a lot of fun. And also, like I said in our first episode discussing this last week, we're discussing this as a fictional fantasy book. So we allow things from our book boyfriends and our fantasy characters that we would never allow in our real lives. So this is not reality. This is fantasy, and let us enjoy our fantasies, friends.
Yes. I saw an Instagram reel yesterday where a guy was like, using my wife's dark romance book is like an instruction manual. So he walks up to her while she's putting on her makeup and tries to put his hand around her throat, and she punches him in the face.
No. Don't do it.
We didn't mean we want you to do that.
Yeah. No. Well, before we get into it, Deb, will you please share our nerdiest cocktail?
Of course. Tonight's drink is named Karma for Creeps.
Yeah.
And it's themed after raw passion. This drink pairs with feckin' Irish hotties and getting beat to a pulp and outdoor tag. And it may cause you to lose control in front of your crush. It's got Irish whiskey in it. Pomegranate juice. You also top it with hard seltzer. So, drink with care.
Yeah.
It is really, really good. It's very smooth.
Good.
I like it a lot. Good job, Whitney.
Oh, thank you so much. I was excited about this. We were just talking before we started recording, Mindy and I. This would be good with lime flavored vodka too.
Yes.
Ooh, it sure
lime
would.
flavored vodka and pomegranate juice.
We feel like the lime is just the perfect addition
Yeah.
that really brings out all the other
Okay,
flavors.
tell the listeners where you found pomegranate juice because I can never find it.
I found this at Target, and it was in the refrigerated section where they have the kombucha.
Why?
I don't know.
I do not understand that at all.
There wasn't very much.
I can never find it at liquor stores. I always go look with their mixers. It's not there.
I pretty much only find like cranberry juice.
Yeah.
At
I'm like,
stores.
grenadine will do, I guess.
Yeah. Well, whatever. It's the same color. It's got some sweetness. Sounds good to me. Mindy, the Wheel o' Names has spoken. Who is doing our nerdy and dirty recap today?
Not me.
It's me.
It's Mindy.
I manifested. Did you guys do that?
You did.
Not me.
It's me.
So Mindy has 30 seconds to give us a recap of what happened in
Can I just
this
say, going
section
from
of the
60
book.
seconds from like the one season to 30 has been just
I know. It's really short. It's not a lot of time.
It scares me.
But these are smaller.
I don't know. We'll see.
These are smaller chunks
I know.
of
If you're
book,
watching
so.
our studio feed, I'm currently stroking Mindy's arm
She's
to
giving
help
me
her.
goosebumps. It's actually
Is sending a shiver down your spine.
It's electrifying.
An ache in your core.
Her stomach muscles clench.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready, Mindy?
I guess.
Well, here we go. Ready, set, and go.
Okay, Sloane makes Rowan jealous when she says she's going on a date, and then he stresses about it and then acts like a huge creep listening to her get off with her vibrator. Then he finds Francis being creepy, also listening to Sloane, but gets away, and they both track him down. He goes beast mode on Francis. He pauses to make sure Sloane stays out of the way, saying, "Mine!" Like it's about the kill, but it's really about her.
Mine.
Rowan thinks Sloane is disgusted and is left, but she appears from the shadows and takes him to clean his wounds. Lark convinces Sloane to go to Boston. Sloane sits and eats at Rowan's restaurant. Lachlan shows up, but she tries to leave, and Rowan says, "Blackbird," and they share an awkward moment, and then, oh man.
They do share an awkward moment.
They do, and then she leaves in embarrassment, and then he delivers food to her, and they talk through cooking like the sexy beast he is.
Good job, Mindy.
I almost made it.
Yeah, it's a lot for a short section.
Lord.
Like a lot happened, especially with Francis.
I'm too wordy. I feel like I'm too wordy when I try to do these things. I need to cut it down.
Like they talked. They
yeah. You are the word nerd.
Yeah, that's true.
I am. That is true.
Well, and speaking of, Mindy, please teach us, train us Our Nerdiest Vocabulary. What do you got for us today?
So a couple of different things this week. First, I wanted to this is a side note, but it's vocabulary adjacent. Orzo. I always thought it was a type of rice, but it is actually pasta.
It looks like rice, though.
Pasta.
Doesn't
It does
looks
look like rice,
but
yeah.
it is actually like little short bits of pasta.
Why
Anyway.
are you shortening
Is that
my
what's-
pasta? That
is-
sounds
I don't
stupid.
know.
Is that what they use for risotto?
Oh, I don't know.
Because that
I
might
thought
be
risotto was the pasta. Is it not?
I think it's how you cook it.
I thought risotto was rice.
See, that's what I'm like wondering. If
I
that's
You
what
can tell
you
we
use,
don't eat this
Yeah,
shit.
if that's what they use for risotto, then I definitely thought it was rice also.
Okay, yeah,
But-
listeners, if anybody knows how to cook, because clearly we do not.
That was
cook fancy
shockingly-
If
stuff.
Rowan Kane could please drop off the
Yes, thank you very
and tell
much.
us how to
Rowan.
cook this stuff, that'd be great.
Rowan.
So that was just a side note that I was today years old when I realized what orzo actually was.
Pasta
Pasta.
in
So-
Boston.
So, of course, I wanted to go back to names, which is like the bread and butter of our nerdiest vocabulary, right? So, of course, I'm going to go with our main characters. And I started with Sloane. And these are actually both, Sloane and Rowan are both Irish names,
Ooh.
which I did not realize that Sloane was also an Irish name.
don't think I
and
did
it
either.
means raider or warrior.
Ooh, that fits.
It does fit. I don't know that Bryn Weaver necessarily goes to as much like
Yeah.
digging as JLA does or Sarah J. Maas, but apparently I did go to Urban Dictionary.
Uh-oh.
Apparently in some parts of the world, particularly in England, a Sloane is like what you call essentially a basic white girl, like a Heather or like
no.
I know. I was like, I don't like
So, like-
that.
She is not basic.
Pumpkin
Yeah.
spice lattes.
Yeah, like the popular,
boots.
like the Heathers or whatever, but it's a
Yeah.
Sloane. I was like, I don't like that. So I say nay to that. And then this next one, I also
that
say
was so
nay.
great.
It just says a bitch,
Oh, Sloan.
straight to the point. They don't miss
Sloane
words.
is kind of a bitch, but I'm okay with it.
Isn't Sloan the name of the girlfriend in Ferris Bueller's
It
Day
is,
Off?
yes.
Okay, yeah. That I could see as like
Yeah,
basic
yeah.
white girl Sloan, but not this one.
I know, but
Not
I don't
the
think
orb
she's
weaver.
basic, but not the orb weaver.
Here's the thing: if she was a man, they'd say she has leadership skills, but because
Yeah.
she's a woman,
Exactly.
she's a bitch.
Exactly.
Which I do not concur with, by the way.
So I did finally find one entry that they got it, right? So this one says that Sloane is the hottest frickin' chick ever.
It's feckin'.
Yeah.
Very funny, much laugh. I'm word for word,
Much
okay?
laugh.
I don't know what that's supposed to mean. And won't hesitate to drop you if you're acting like a bitch.
Well, yeah.
So,
Deservedly so.
yes. Is loyal, though. Don't forget that. Is very smart for no reason. And is really cool for no reason.
For no reason.
And all your friends will like her better because she's just that cool. And she is just cooler than everybody. So you have no option but to look up to her.
I feel like a 10-year-old named Sloan wrote that.
It's
She's
what
so
you
cool and
use
she's so smart and everyone likes her
for no reason.
for no reason.
She's just smart because she is.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I thought that one made me laugh. So moving on to Rowan.
Do I want to hear this or do I need to put on earmuffs?
Okay, so
I say nay.
she did not base her character of Rowan on what it actually means.
Uh-oh.
It's Irish for little redhead,
Aw, isn't that sweet?
but he's not redhead, right? He's got
I don't
black
think he
hair,
is.
right?
Yeah, I think he
Okay.
has dark hair.
I do picture him as redheaded, though. I
Really?
picture him as Stuart Mackey. He's on Instagram.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I picture Fionn more like that,
Yeah, you're probably right.
but with short hair.
But it's too late.
That's
I've already gone
the
there.
Whitney method of like, I don't actually know how
well,
they're described.
It's because I listened to the audiobook and they sound alike.
Oh,
the
yeah, the
narrator
same
is Stuart
accent.
Mackey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so no dick mentions actually. I don't think.
I say nay.
But there's some there's some very interesting things that came out of this name. So one of them said, "You don't want to mess with a Rowan." True.
Yeah, that fits.
They are loyal in relationships and will stick up for their friends. They are this was what made me laugh. They are annoying at home and annoy their families.
Well, that's
So
accurate.
clearly, this was written by Rowan's brother Lachlan.
Yeah. This is accurate.
Rowan's moods can swing from distant genius to hyperspaz and sometimes spazzy genius.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Did Bryn Weaver write that one?
I know. I feel like that could have been a line in this book.
Yeah.
Okay. This one Oh my gosh. It's a little long, so stick with me. Rowan can be described as nothing short of amazing. His wit and quick thinking make this Rowan similar to a Greek god in the early 12 BC, where sandal wearing and grape eating was seen as a sexual desire.
Oh, yeah.
Not if he's wearing socks with those sandals.
Not to mention having a degree in awesome. And if your name is Rowan and you don't have this degree, maybe you should think about a name change. Now, typically a Rowan's habitat, I don't know why it veers this way. Typically a Rowan's habitat would consist of a shed, a bed, and a sensual lava lamp.
That is not where I thought that was going.
I know, me too.
To attract or detract any intruders on the premises, and his daily behavior is also similar to that of an ape.
Is he a stoner? He sounds like a stoner.
So, but other than that, he is a pretty cool guy.
Okay, that in my brain was written by a 15-year-old girl who has a crush on a guy named like Rowan at school.
Yeah.
And she's like,
And he's got a lava lamp.
yeah,
in his
she's
shed.
like, she's diddling to visions of Rowan and his lava lamp in his shed.
with his sandals and feeding her grapes.
Yeah.
I almost named my firstborn Rowan.
Did you really?
Yeah, because my favorite book, The Witching Hour, the woman in it is Rowan.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
And also there's a Rowena in Mr. Holland's Opus, which is a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
And I really love that name, but I don't know if you guys did this. When I was pregnant, I was like, it's not the right name. It just didn't feel right. And
Yeah.
I had that name picked out for years and years, but yeah, it's going to be Rowan Parker.
Yeah.
Ended
I
up being
like that.
Sadie Rose.
love it.
I like Sadie better.
Sadie really fits her
It
really
really
well.
does.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our Urban Dictionary for the week.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm always
for sharing.
surprised. You never know which way it's going to go.
Thank you, Urban Dictionary, for providing all that
Our
entertainment to
Rowan
us.
owns 2 businesses and he does not live in a shed.
And
And
he
I-
doesn't
But
act like an ape.
He
I
might
doubt-
have a lava lamp, though.
Well, we
if
know
he
he has
has-
a bed.
If he has a shed, it's a murder shed. You know what I mean? It's not for a lava lamp.
It's
It's
where
for
like all the
murder.
machetes are.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's go into the nitty and gritty of this section. Let's start with our favorite moments.
I want to hear yours first, Whitney.
Mine, well, my favorite and least favorite moment are kind of like opposite of each other. So my favorite moment is just that Sloane has the courage and the vulnerability and basically just like a screw it attitude to just go to Boston and visit him. And I love that. I would never have the balls to do that in her position. Like, I'm not in a relationship with this person, but we definitely have something going on, and I'm just gonna show up cross
I
country or
would've.
like, I would never
I
have
would've
done
too.
that. And I really admire just the like, yeah, I'm just gonna go do that, you know? And I really, really love that vulnerability that she is immediately like, she's so nervous.
I
and
know. It's
yeah,
so
she
sweet.
like doesn't know what to do. Like, she doesn't even tell him like, hey, I'm at your restaurant. Like, she doesn't do any of that. And I also really love the little kind of subtle hint that Rowan hopes that she'll show up one day, and it seems like he has told his staff, like, if you ever see this lady, like, come get me, because he says to the hostess, like, what the fuck?
You were supposed
and
to go,
yeah.
yeah.
She's like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot to come tell you. I'd like, it's so subtle, and I just love that so much. I think it's
Yeah.
really sweet.
Did you notice in that part where, because I didn't have anywhere to put this in my notes, but I thought it was so funny that when Lachlan figures out who she is, in the previous section we read, he had asked Rowan what her name was, and he said, fuck off. And he goes, nice to meet you, fuck off. So when he
Yeah.
notices her, he goes, hey, fuck off.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like, she's very confused,
Yeah.
but it's just Lachlan in a nutshell.
Yes, I love
love
that.
it.
Well, and as soon as Lachlan clocks that she's there, like, Rowan comes out within 2 minutes. So it's like, you know that he texted like, dude, your girl's here.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I love that.
Such
that
a
whole
good
scene.
dynamic.
What about you guys? What was your favorite moment?
What
Go
was
ahead,
yours,
man.
Deb? Oh.
Go ahead.
We're too nice.
No, you first.
No, you. So I had just a couple.
I wasn't being nice. I just went to a different place in my notes.
Save yourself.
I was like, I was making sure I wrote something down. God, go.
So I loved when Rowan grabs Francis's tie to strangle him, but it rips off because it's a clip-on.
clip-on,
and he
yeah.
says, a fucking clip-on? What are you, 12?
I enjoyed that a lot too.
I laughed so hard at that. And then I also really loved, this is opposite, the tender moment when Rowan and Sloane when she's cleaning him up and they're talking about his horrible dad, and he mentions that he's not sorry about all the trauma in his life because he wouldn't have ended up where he is. And then he tucks her hair behind her ear and says, I have no regrets about where I am.
I know. I love that.
Sweet,
I have
sweet
a question
pretty boy.
about that section though, because they go into Francis's bathroom. He's bleeding everywhere. She's cleaning him up, and they're like, "Well, DNA, fuck it."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Normally they're very meticulous, and it seemed weird that they didn't go back to the hotel to clean themselves up.
I
I didn't even think
assume-
about that.
I assume that they cleaned everything up just like off the page.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
It just felt sloppy, and they're not sloppy.
Yeah.
See, that's why I assume that had just, it happened off the page and we just didn't see,
Yeah.
because the rest of it was sweeter. It's more fun to read.
I got caught up in the sweetness.
And then she helped me bleach the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. Or like we burned it to the ground, like we did the first dude in chapter
Right.
1 or whatever.
Yeah. Well, my favorite moment was when Rowan and Sloane are cooking over the phone. First of all, those ingredients that he buys are expensive.
Yeah, they are.
So we get proof that this guy actually knows his food and is probably a good chef. Because there's a lot of shitty chefs out there, right?
Yeah.
Just because he owns a restaurant doesn't mean it's a good restaurant.
Yeah, that's true.
And second, they get to spend tons of time together while she cooks. They like talk about like their families and their job history and all that stuff. And it's just a really, really sweet moment.
Yeah, I like that a lot too.
I loved that too.
So let's talk about our least favorite moment. So my favorite moment is that Sloane like goes to see him. And then my least favorite moment is when she goes to see him.
Yeah.
And her immediate like, this was a mistake.
Oh, holy
Yeah.
fuck, what did I do?
Yeah,
I was
and
too
she just
impulsive.
like, yeah, she doesn't tell him that she's there. She doesn't talk to him really when he comes out. She's like, I'm gonna go. And just like
It's
runs.
very awkward.
She just runs away, and it's so embarrassing
But I
and
do
awkward.
think she thought
and-
that blonde woman might have been like his girlfriend.
Oh,
or
100%.
something.
Yes.
Yeah.
But she just like pieces out. And all of the stuff that I loved about the fact that she went disappears from her personality.
Yeah.
Right? Like the vulnerability and the courage and the screw it attitude that got her to Boston is like, no, I don't have that
But
anymore.
it took her 3 months to make that decision, too.
I know. That humanizes her a lot for me, but just that immediate flip of like, nope, I'm humiliated and I'm gonna run away and literally run and just run until I can't run anymore. Like that's me. I would never have gone. I would definitely embarrass myself.
Deb gets to the restaurant. Whitney leaves the restaurant.
Yeah, exactly.
I would have done the same thing she did, though.
Yeah.
I would have been mortified.
100%. Deb, what was your least favorite moment?
The guy whacking off behind the fake painting.
Ugh, so gross.
Okay, for the record, like the eyes change, and I thought that only happened in the Saved by the Bell murder mystery episode.
I wrote Scooby Doo. Yeah, like that's a very Scooby Doo thing.
It was because I'm
Yeah.
like, how could you not like? And also, like, you didn't notice those eyes in
Those
the painting were
eyeballs
blank
moving around?
before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My second one though is learning more about Sloane's trauma, but it's still not
A
enough.
mystery. Yeah.
So it says, art brings up bad memories sometimes. I used to love painting. I'd paint for hours. I started experimenting with sculpture too, but things ... changed. Sketching is like a foundation. It's all that was left when the rest burned down. The only thing I still enjoy. Well, that and my webs, which feel like art to me. But
Yeah,
I'm like,
I know.
you don't paint anymore. That makes me sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
so
an artist to quit doing that, it is a huge piece missing.
right.
You know?
Well, and it's a huge sign of, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, but I think it's a big sign of like where you are mentally,
Yeah.
Right.
Like your mental health,
I'm not
something,
okay.
yeah, something that's such a big part of who you are when you're just setting it aside and
Yeah.
ignoring it. That says a lot. Yeah.
Yep.
What about you, Min? What was your least favorite?
I just how crazed and scary Rowan gets when he's punching and killing Francis. Like this is a huge like light switch moment. Like he's
Yeah.
been this fun, flirty, roguish.
I'm breezy.
Yeah. And then just like that in a moment, he becomes this like enraged beast, basically.
Well, and we talked last episode about how Sloane seems like a serial killer, but he does not. But in this instance, he
In this
very
instant,
much
he
does.
flipped,
really
yeah.
does. It's the first time we see him lose control. It's totally terrifying. It's described as rage descends like a red curtain. And you hear this a lot, like people saying, oh, I saw red when I was so angry. And I thought, do people really see that? Like, what is that
literal?
phenomenon? Like, is that a biological thing? Is that not something that really happens? And there's plenty of anecdotal evidence that when people get really, really angry, unnaturally so, they actually see things with a red tint to them. So, is this a biological or a psychological reason, or is this just all like making up a fun phrase or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I looked into it a little bit. Biologically, there really aren't any studies to prove that something happens in your body to make you see red, but some speculate that it is part of the fight or flight response. And when you have a huge outpouring of adrenal hormones, it increases blood flow. And in extreme cases, the blood flow can make you see red. I don't really know about that.
Have you all ever done that?
I don't think I have gotten that mad.
I haven't gotten that mad to the point where I lose control, but I have gotten angry to the point where like I can feel it, almost like a physical thing that starts in my gut.
I would agree
moves.
with that. I've done that too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to lose my shit if I don't get myself out of this situation.
Yeah.
So maybe you see red if you can't get yourself
Well, and
out.
some people
Yeah.
describe it also as like tunnel vision.
Okay.
That they'll get
Yeah.
that there's something happens to their vision where it just like tunnels, and so I don't know.
That happened when I looked in the mirror at a tanning place and realized I had a pooch and that I was pregnant. I literally got tunnel vision because we were told we probably couldn't get pregnant on our own a second time. And I was at a tanning booth and I was like, what the fuck is that? And I literally had tunnel vision. You know how like in the movies where like it
just like
goes
yes.
in and it turns into a black dot? I was like, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to pass out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, that did happen to me. I wasn't mad. I was like,
It was
well,
just emotions.
whew.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't
Adrenaline.
think biologically there's really any like evidence to that. But psychologically, there is a bit more validity to the phenomenon of seeing red. Your brain does respond to certain colors, and red is often associated with anger. One example is the use of a red pen while grading. Apparently, students found that when something is written in red pen, it is perceived as being more harsh. And teachers were actually shown to grade lower when they were writing in red.
I used to use like
Interesting.
pastel colored pens when I was a teacher.
D+, way to go.
Yeah, I would use like purple and
Rainbows
teal.
and hearts.
You're better than this. in hot pink.
So I guess it begs the question, if seeing red can make you feel angry, can being angry make you see red? And the answer is sort of. One North Dakota State University study sought to show that when angry, you may at least perceive that things are more red. So in the first test, subjects were asked whether they preferred red or blue, and then they took a personality test. And results of that showed that the people who preferred red had a tendency to be more hostile in interpersonal situations, or reporting that they were more hostile. Next, participants were shown images that were kind of faded so that they showed both blue and red to some extent, but neither color was dominant. The ones that saw predominantly red in the images scored 25% higher on the indicators for hostility on the personality test.
That's
and
interesting.
one thing the researchers indicated in their article was that, quote, hostile people have hostile thoughts. Hostile thoughts are implicitly associated with the color red, and therefore hostile people are more biased to see this color more frequently.
That makes sense. Like a
Yeah.
subconscious, because
Yeah.
that is a very cultural thing.
Yeah.
That red is anger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So finally they did a third test, and they did present the participants with imaginary scenarios where they could take various actions. So the people who preferred red were more likely to say they would harm another person than the blue preferring subjects. So
That's
Do
interesting.
you guys like blue or red better when you're picking a color? I'm serious.
I'm always going to pick blue.
I pick red.
I usually pick red.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Uh-oh.
Don't fuck with me and Whitney.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that says about me, because I guess I just don't.
I think
I
you're
just
a
bottle.
chill.
I bought all of mine up, and then I like take it out on myself. I guess I don't know.
You're
I
a
will
cool
say
cat.
I probably least bottle the things in the room, but I also am probably the most blunt person in the room. I'm probably the least likable person on the podcast.
I don't
No.
think that's true.
No,
at
it's
all.
okay.
I think you are the most blunt
I
person.
do
but
think
that
you're the
doesn't-
most blunt, but that doesn't make you
What
not
the fuck
likable.
does
Yeah.
that mean? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I don't know.
But there you have it. Maybe there's
Yeah.
some truth to the anecdotal evidence, but maybe it's just a phrase that started because people's faces turn red when they're
When
really
you get
angry.
mad. That's true,
and that
too.
is a blood flow thing. So I don't know. It was a cool perspective on it, but it's just, you hear that a lot. Like, I saw red.
Yeah.
And it just makes me wonder I mean, nobody will, I guess, will ever know except for the people that actually experience it.
Yeah, there's got to be some truth to it.
Yeah,
or
I mean,
it wouldn't be a thing.
Exactly.
You know? Well, that's interesting that scene kind of spurred your deep dive, because it did mine too. So when Rowan beats the crap out of Creeper Francis, and that is the creep in the cocktail, Karma for Creeps, because he definitely gets his karma right.
Or the clip-on tie.
Yes.
Yeah, the clip-on tie Creeper. So Sloane talks about it later to Lark and says that Rowan was out of control and that she's used to controlled, right? And she talks about how it made her want to leave, and she almost did and then decided not to. And so this is actually a real idea in criminology, and it's talked about on shows like Criminal Mind and in actual criminology when people are investigating violent crimes. So I wanted to do a deep dive into what this idea of controlled versus uncontrolled means. So when you're actually talking about serial killers, there are lots of different ways that you can categorize their different behaviors throughout the entire process of how or why they choose their victims, the violence that they perpetrate on their victims, how they deal with destroying evidence, all that stuff. Like, you can categorize the different motives and methods of serial killers all across the way. So one of those ways to organize or categorize them is this idea of being controlled versus uncontrolled, which in criminology is termed as organized versus disorganized. So organized is controlled, disorganized is uncontrolled. So that's basically the main difference between an organized killer and a disorganized one, is their level of control during the entire process of their crime. I want to give some examples, and I am going to do a trigger warning. I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive into one particular serial killer in a couple of minutes. And, just skip over it if you don't want to hear the details. So organized killers, they are focused on the process of their crime. They plan out the type of victim or a specific victim before they take the actual victim. They plan an abduction or a ruse to kind of seduce their victim to come with them to a planned location. They've planned out exactly what horrible things they're going to do to that victim. It is way more involved for an organized killer than just kill someone. Like, it's a whole fantasy, and the fantasy that they are living out is what they are focused on. It's not like murder in and of itself. It's the entire process of this fantasy.
I feel like Sloane's like that.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes. So because they're living out this entire fantasy, they have to plan out this entire process. So they plan the specific acts of violence, whether there's going to be a sexual aspect, specific acts of torture, a specific form of killing, to live out whatever their psychotic fantasy is. They also organized killers go through a lot of effort and research to hide evidence to keep themselves from getting caught. And there are typically 3 completely separate locations involved in an organized killing. So the first location is where a victim is either taken or willingly goes with the killer under some kind of fake ruse. A second location where the violence and murder takes place. And then a third location where the victim's body gets hidden or disposed of. So in order to be successful at being an organized killer, they are typically very educated, highly intelligent, cunning, skilled, and probably charismatic, because they're usually not just taking people off the street, they're luring people in to their space, right? So an example of an organized killer would be Ted Bundy, as well as Dennis Rader, who was known as the BTK killer, bind, torture, kill killer. And from the outside looking in, those guys were, quote, normal, right?
Yeah.
They were smart, they were charming, they had jobs, they had friends, they had romantic partners, they had children even. Dennis Rader actually worked at a church. Like, from the outside looking in, they were able to hide in plain sight.
That's what's so terrifying
Yeah.
about this.
100%. Yeah. Organized and disorganized killers are scary in like very different ways. And organized killers, I think, are horrifying because they're smart enough to keep up with police work and research and find, like, okay, how do they investigate these crimes and what do I need to do to stay off the radar? Which is why they were able to have so many victims, right?
I feel like part of the reason too, like, when an organized killer gets caught, I feel like normally it's because something didn't go right.
Yes.
Something didn't go their way and they had to improvise, and they are not used to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Either that or their like narcissism kicked in.
Yeah.
And they they did too much to draw attention to themselves because they needed the attention. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they know right from wrong, these organized killers, they just don't care. They think through it very much. The fact that they have different locations makes it harder for them to get caught because there's evidence at different places. So you might find evidence at the location where a victim was taken, but then they vanish into thin air and you don't know where the next location was, or you can find, you know, a disposed body, but all you have is the body and no evidence of what actually happened to them because that's the third location. You know, like it just makes it harder for investigators. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, there is disorganized, which Rowan is an example of when he loses control here. Where organized killers are focused on this process, the whole thing from start to finish to live out their deranged fantasies, disorganized killers are really focused on just the act of murder itself. So for a disorganized killer, it's more about feeding their compulsion to kill. And there's a lot less thought put into it and very little, if any, planning beforehand. It's really, this is oversimplified, but really it's, I feel this need and I'm going to feed this compulsion. I'm going to go do this right now. Yeah. And so it's kind of like more crimes of convenience and like victims of convenience and not like I have a type that I need to find.
Which is almost more scary.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was saying a couple minutes ago. Scary in a completely different way, right? So in terms of finding a victim, like I just said, it's usually crimes of convenience, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's usually just one location. So a disorganized killer, you know, there's no thought put into this beforehand. So they tend to what's known as blitz their victims, which basically just means that they suddenly and forcefully overtake them and kill them right then and there and make little or no attempt to hide or cover up the body. And typically they leave behind physical evidence of themselves and typically makes them a little bit easier to catch because everything's all in one location and they're not as meticulous about cleaning up any physical evidence. So these type of killers tend to leave physical evidence behind, and they're usually pretty opposite in terms they're opposite of organized killers in terms of their personality. So they are typically uneducated. They typically have a lower IQ. They would have a hard time holding a job. They can be more socially awkward and socially outcast and very much isolated, and usually do not have reliable transportation and stick close to home when they kill, which makes it even easier for them to apprehend because you can kind of narrow down where you're looking for people, right? They usually come from very unstable, dysfunctional families, and many disorganized killers were sexually or physically abused as children. So ironically, it's likely that while they are carrying out their violent crimes, they themselves feel afraid and confused, where the organized killer is going to feel thrilled or maybe even sexually gratified because they're living out their fantasy, right? So a well-known disorganized serial killer is Richard Ramirez, who was known as the Night Stalker. He was a serial killer in California in 1984 and 1985. So extra trigger warning here because he's just a piece of shit. I mean, he fits very much to a T, a disorganized killer, which is why I want to give some details about him. But this is one of the worst criminals in my personal opinion, and that says a lot. So he's pretty much a classic disorganized killer. He was abused by his father as a child to the point that it caused brain damage, and he started abusing drugs, not just abusing drugs by the time he was 10 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Which is my oldest age. So just think about that. So obviously the abuse and drugs affected his brain development at such a young age. When he was 15, he witnessed a murder when his Vietnam veteran cousin, who had schizophrenia and pretty severe PTSD, that cousin killed his own wife in front of Richard Ramirez. So that is going to affect, you know, how things develop in your brain as well. At age 22, he started using cocaine and started committing burglaries to support that addiction. And those burglaries quickly escalated into rape and murder. So as a disorganized killer, his victims did not fit a profile because these were spur of the moment killings of convenience. His victims ranged from a young girl as young as 9 years old to a 79-year-old elderly woman, and also some older men and their wives. These killings happened everywhere from parks where one couple was taking a walk to his own basement where he lured his 9-year-old victim to victims' own homes that this piece of shit was robbing. And in one case, he robbed a house a year before and went back just because he felt like it and murdered the family that was living there at that time. His mode of killing also varied from stabbing to beating to shooting. Sometimes there was a sexual element to his attacks, and sometimes there wasn't. There was no real rhyme or reason. It was just whatever his compulsion was telling him to do in that moment. He ended up being apprehended. This is kind of a crazy story. He ended up being apprehended because he left a shoe print behind at one of the crime scenes. And wouldn't you know it, there were only 6 pairs of that particular shoe in that particular size in the entire country.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy? And so they were able to, out of those 6 pairs of shoes, only one of those pairs of shoes was sold in the state of California. And so they knew,
fucker.
I know,
Yeah.
right? So plot twist, this actually isn't the end of the story, because the mayor of, I think, San Francisco at this time, Dianne Feinstein, who went on to be a longtime congresswoman, she gave that information about the shoe to the press, and the investigators were pissed. And Richard Ramirez saw the news reports and chucked his shoes over the Golden Gate Bridge.
Of course he did.
And so that evidence was gone.
Right.
And so the investigators were like pissed. So that was not a great thing. So, you know.
And what decade was this in?
80s, mid 80s.
So you didn't have like computer sales records.
There were computers, but yeah, not anything reliable. Everything took forever, right?
Right.
So that shows his tendency to leave evidence behind, which he continued to do, and that ultimately led to his capture. So eventually he was caught, a combination of a couple of different things. There was a survivor of an attack that described him in detail to police, which gave them a really great sketch that they were able to use to find him. Also, a footprint from a crime scene and a single fingerprint that he left behind in a stolen car. And they were able to use all of those things together to pinpoint this guy who had a rap sheet at this point, right? And so what's really interesting about the fingerprint is that the state of California started taking fingerprints from criminals that were born after a certain time, and his birthday was 1 month after that time.
Oh, wow.
So like he just barely made that cutoff, and that's the only reason they had his fingerprint. And that was the major way they were able to find him, which is just one of those things that just works out. Yeah. So he was arrested. He was eventually convicted of 43 charges, 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The expense of his trial in California was only surpassed by the O.J. Simpson trial in the 90s.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? Ramirez was sentenced to death, but ultimately died in prison before his execution was carried out. You know, good riddance to that piece of shit. And there's a really good documentary about this entire case that goes into way more detail on Netflix. If you're interested in that, it's called The Night Stalker, The Hunt for a Serial Killer. But he is a really classic example of a disorganized killer, which made him scarier because there was no rhyme or reason to anything that he did. So it really was literally anybody at any time, at any place in the, LA, San Francisco area could be in danger. And that makes disorganized killers so dangerous and so scary to the public because you can't predict anything that they're going to do. And that's part of what makes them in some ways harder to find because you can't narrow things down as much, except for they're going to be close to home and they're probably going to leave evidence behind. Whereas somebody like Dennis Rader and Ted Bundy are horrifying because they could be sitting next to you in the church pew
or at your job,
and maybe you don't fit their victim profile, but you have no idea like the psychopath that they are because they're just so good at hiding. So there we go. There's the Night Stalker, the worst piece of shit in all the land.
I'm not going to sleep tonight.
I know. And that's not even like remotely detailed.
Tip of the iceberg.
How horrible he is. But he is one of the worst, if not the worst. So that was my deep dive. You want to talk about fun stuff now? Let's talk about our serial killers in the book. Let's talk about our biggest revelations. Mindy, what was your biggest revelation?
Mine's not even really a revelation. I feel like I never have revelations anymore. But I do love, and I'd forgotten about this, how Sloane keeps Francis's cat.
Oh, wait, that's where she gets the cat?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. I didn't realize
I had forgotten that too.
And so, it barely brings it up in these chapters, but it talks about her, I think, when she's talking to Rowan on the phone one time and she pets the cat or something.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh yeah, she kept the cat.
Yeah.
I love that.
I thought that it was from one of their people, but I couldn't remember exactly where that cat came from. But yeah, mine is not really a revelation, kind of, but not really. I'm just trying to look, as I'm reading this second time, I'm trying to look for the writing choices and the character choices that make me like Sloane and Rowan, because on the surface, like, we should not like them, right? Like, we should not be rooting for these characters, but I love them so much, and I do root for them. And so I'm looking for what Brynn Weaver is doing to make me like them. And I mentioned earlier, like, the humanizing of Sloane and making her like be embarrassed and leave and, you know, totally mess up that whole visit to Boston. I noticed the humanizing stuff that she as a writer did for Rowan and Sloane. So Sloane, you know, I talked about that already with the embarrassment, but Rowan doing that simple gesture of like sending the ingredients and cooking, helping her cook. So he's sweet. Like, he's wooing her. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, he's being really sweet.
Intentionally,
yes,
too.
Like, he's got this crush on this really pretty girl, and he's, like, doing something nice to try to get her to be his girlfriend. And that's very normal. Yes. Right? Like, I mean, they're serial killers and they're crazy. But, you know, they are trying to get the person that they like to date them. And they're getting embarrassed in front of each other. And they're, like, unsure of themselves. And, like, that's very relatable. Yeah. And so I'm noticing those kind of writing choices that Brynn Weaver does.
I do love how they're very uncertain of them. Like, like a lot of instances, they're very like badass and just, you know, out there. But like when it comes to these love things, they're very insecure. They have low self-esteem where it comes to that. They don't know what they're doing, you know? And so
Sloane more so than Rowan, because he still is like, I know she thinks I'm hot. I know she thinks I'm pretty.
But he still doesn't think she likes him back.
I know.
You know? And so
he's like, I think she likes me.
Maybe.
Right?
Am I reading it wrong? Yeah.
Yeah. They're so sweet.
So speaking of Rowan, I kind of feel like he's a stunt guy in the scene where he attacks Frances and is holding on to the roof of the car while it's like speeding and careening wildly. We've all seen that in movies, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so it really got me wondering what stunts the human body could actually do and take, right? Because I'm not sure I could do that.
Without the magic of Hollywood.
I do not have the arm strength for that.
Okay. I was, that is part of one of my points later on. But I found this awesome article on empireonline.com about 10 crazy movie stunts in Hollywood. And these are all things with the exception of the very first one where they did it without like harnesses and stuff.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Okay. So I'm only going to talk about a few of these, but we'll link the article in the show notes. So I'm going to start with Tom Cruise. If you've watched any Mission Impossible movie, you know that the stunts are pretty insane.
Yeah.
So imagine him holding on to the side of an airplane at the beginning of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation in 2015. And this plane was at an altitude of 5,000 feet, traveling at speeds of up to 160 miles per hour with, you know, Tom Cruise literally just like hanging off the side of it. Now, he did have a harness on, but everything was his like body weight and everything. They weren't like holding him up.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Jeez. And then in the 1985 movie Police Story, Jackie Chan jumps 8 feet onto a 6-story pole, stories, and slides all the way down without any cables or harnesses. He suffered second-degree burns from the light-heated pole because there were like lights and like fire and stuff coming off of it. Dislocated his pelvis.
Oh my gosh.
And nearly paralyzed his back.
Dang.
Yeah. So third, in the 1974 film The Man with the Golden Gun, which is a Bond film, a stunt driver pulled off a full car corkscrew in one take. He'd never done the stunt before, and this was the first time a stunt driver had used a computer simulator to design the stunt.
Oh,
so he's like, sure, I'll try it.
In the 70s? Oh, wow.
Yeah, in the 70s.
That's awesome.
So we're starting to see a little bit of a trend here where we were much less interested in our safety in the 20th century because this stunt is insane. In the movie Cliffhanger, which we all know from like Stallone's one-handed rock climbing, right? It came out in 1993 and holds the world's record for the most expensive stunt ever completed in the air.
Oh, wow.
So a stuntman literally zip lines between two airplanes going 150 miles per hour with temperatures at negative 32 degrees Fahrenheit. He was paid a cool $1 million to perform the stunt because if both the engines weren't going at the same like velocity, he could get sucked into the engine, like the engine of one of the planes.
Oh,
You would
can
need to
imagine?
pay me so much more
I know.
than $1
That
million
is not enough.
for that.
So finally, let's talk about what Rowan does in this scene where he holds on to the like front of a car while Frances is trying to drive away. And Mindy, you said this. I have zero upper body
There's
strength.
Yeah,
so
me too.
I was convinced this could not work. But Zoe Bell, who you might know as being the stunt woman for Uma Thurman in the Kill Bill movies, actually holds onto the hood of a 100 mile per hour car 100 mile per hour car in the 2007 movie Death Proof. She did the stunt hanging unaided on the car's hood, all while another car actively tries to run them off the road.
That's crazy.
So in conclusion,
crap.
Rowan's badass.
Yeah.
But we already knew that. But I don't think I could hold on
Yeah, I have
to the
spaghetti
car
arms.
hood. Yeah.
I
So
feel
someone
like-
has actually done that unaided. That's
I
what's
don't
insane
even
about it.
have the upper body strength to like hold on to Rowan. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way.
I would find
hold
the
on to
string.
Rowan.
He could hold on to me.
No, I would find the string.
But I would stay on there. I probably have the leg strength.
I was gonna say,
I was about to say, I'd wrap my legs around him and I would not let go.
I've got the pelvic floor strength.
Yeah, exactly.
So hold on.
It's like,
It's a
do
Rowan.
you feel that Kegel? Do you like it?
Regina would be proud. Oh man. Well, thank you for that. I could never be a stunt person.
Me either.
No. Have you
No,
all
thanks.
seen The Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling?
No, not yet.
Not yet, but
Okay, honestly, like I kind of wish I could go with you guys and see it in the theater. I don't know if it's still anywhere, but first of all, it's really good. The plot is really good. It's funny,
Yeah.
but it's all shit like this.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We almost watched it the other night and then I fell asleep.
It's good. I would highly recommend it.
Darren randomly put on something on YouTube, and it was like all these 1980s like theme like openers of all
Oh,
these
yeah.
TV shows, and The Fall Guy was one of them.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, let's talk about our favorite spicy scene. I mean, there's not a whole lot of spice in this section.
I
What
feel
did
like
you guys?
all my spicy scenes involve Rowan getting a Woody. Like this time, he gets a Woody thinking about bending Sloane over the kitchen counter. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay
Yeah.
with that too. He can bend me over anytime.
Well, I just put that woman you were watching, she's mine. When he says that,
That
to
is
Frances.
very sexy.
And I put, wrap me up a piece of Rowan cane, please.
One of the that's a great example of the like I will take that from my bug boyfriend, but never in real
Oh,
life.
yeah,
like,
no.
Because I
like what do you
belong to
mean I'm
nobody.
yours? No, I loved the scene before we discover the creepy Frances is watching her. When Rowan hears the buzzing
Right.
and is like, "Oh shit!" I really enjoyed that
And
a
I
lot.
felt like he was like, he put his ear to the wall and he's like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And he puts his ear
And
to the
then he
wall
does,
again. He's
yeah.
like, I can't do it. And he's like, okay, I'm going to listen.
Yeah, and I love that he knows that she's thinking about him. And the quote, it made me laugh so hard when he says he hears her say Rowan, or maybe Sowen, or Cohen, or Samoan. Can't really be sure. I'll just go with Rowan. That made me laugh.
How aggressively hard did Francis have to be whacking off for
him?
Rowan to hear it through the wall?
Yeah.
Over the buzzing.
Because he said
Yeah.
he hears him moan, but then he also says he can hear
The
him like
movement.
moving up and down. And I'm like,
Yeah.
God, dude, you were like going for it.
Maybe he also used too much like personal
Lube.
lubricant. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I won't make the noise for our listeners, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Ew. I was being nice and not doing it.
Well, I'm the more blunt one.
That's true. So who did you guys choose for your chapter MVP?
Who's yours, man?
I chose Lark
Oh, yeah?
because she's the one that got Sloane off her ass and told her to go to Boston.
Yeah.
I just,
a
she's
good
such a
one.
good friend. Like
She really
she
is.
really listens to Sloane but also pushes her. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Lark.
Is that yours too, Whit?
No,
Who's
I
yours?
picked Rowan as my chapter MVP because he's funny. He makes me laugh. He's so sweet. And I forgot how much I loved him reading this the first time, right? Like I haven't read this book in a while, and I love the protectiveness with Frances. I love the subtle clue that he has been hoping that Sloane will just show up at his restaurant. I love the dinner kits. I love that he does that. I love him. I just love him.
Okay, you like literally just said verbatim what I was going to say. Like even the order of the way you said it, I put the same exact thing. Like Rowan all the way.
Yeah, he's great. Although I did pick Lark for my favorite secondary character.
Okay, why?
For that same part of that same reason. It was her idea for Sloane to go to Boston, which I thought was a perfect idea. I still maintain that it was the right idea. And reading this again after reading Leather and Lark, seeing some of who she is in this first book, like I didn't remember that there were some things about Lark that I didn't remember were in this first book. I thought they were only in Leather and Lark, like the Keanu Reeves and Constantine.
I
didn't remember.
That too.
Yeah, I didn't remember that was in this one.
We just last season did an episode about BDE and talked about Keanu Reeves in it.
Yeah, 100%. And I loved these quotes from her that you see a little bit of who she is in this first book, and then you really see it in Leather and Lark, where she says about Keanu Reeves, dark, broody, and grumpy, sign me up. And then she says, I just want to be tossed around a bit, manhandled, you know, call me a dirty little slut and I'm all for it. And in my notes, I wrote, girl, just you wait. It's like both of those, a dark, broody, grumpy guy. I'm
Yep.
You're getting
He's
yours.
coming for you.
Yeah. Just be patient, girl.
So because I have a 12-year-old, the 12-year-old on the bike that made $500 in 3 days was my favorite secondary
That was mine
character.
too.
The easiest job ever.
Right. Not only does this kid have a great business plan, but he's going to get the PlayStation he wants. But I have to say, if my son came home and told me about this,
I
would likely do a well check on Sloane.
Yeah.
Since paying the kid to drop off food 3 days in a row while he hides behind a tree,
It's creepy.
makes Rowan look a little bit like a stalker.
Yeah,
I'm
red
like,
flag.
I'm just going to go knock on her door. Buddy, you can keep the money. I want you to have a PlayStation too. But I'm going to go knock on her door and just make sure she's okay.
Yeah, she hasn't been poisoned for the past 3 days.
Or it wasn't like you shouldn't be sending her food and you have a restraining order type of thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I thought that kid, like, I don't even know if he has dialogue, but great side character.
Yeah.
No, I think he does because that's where he tells him he's going to buy a plate. He says,
that's right. Yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, what are you going to do with this money? Yeah, I said the same thing for the same reasons. He knew his role.
Yeah,
He's like, I know what I got to do to get this money, and I'm going to do it.
It's
Well,
easy.
then when he tells Rowan he's getting a PlayStation, he's like, here, let me even it out for you. Here's $200
Here
more.
you go. Yeah. Another example of in the book, it's fantastic. In real life, it's concerning.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you imagine if Liam came home and he's like, Mom, some guy paid me $500 to keep taking this chick food.
I would probably call the police. Yeah. I really would.
Would you let Liam buy the PlayStation?
Probably.
I mean, he earned it.
He earned the money, yeah. I'm not paying for it. What about favorite quotes? I had so many quotes I
did
wanted to
too.
write down.
I'll go first because I only have one. It was the one that really stood out to me. I'm boobing boobily, Rowan. What does it look like I'm doing?
I wrote that
like
one
that
down
one
too.
too.
Yeah.
I like that quote because I genuinely don't know if Sloane actually said it or if Rowan just hears it because he's thinking about her braless boobs.
yeah.
Like
Right.
Sloane could totally say that. And
Right.
But it was
love,
from his perspective. So,
right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't actually know if she said it or not. Either way, it's funny.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love that. That made me laugh a lot.
It
too.
reminds me of all the Instagram posts that make fun of men writing romance. And then her breasts felt full.
Yeah. What about you, Mindy?
I had 3 very different ones, and they're all real short. So the first one was, I just laughed so hard when Rowan said, if inanimate objects had feelings, the brass lamp next to the bed would be shitting itself.
I highlighted that too. I thought that was so
I was like,
funny.
oh my gosh. And then this one's a little more serious, a little more introspective. Sloane says, I drop my head into my palms and hope that they can absorb me into another world. One where I don't have to feel anything because revenge is easy, but everything else is hard.
That really stuck with me.
Yeah, it really stood out to me as well. But then the sweet moment is when
The sweet
moment
with the sweaty balls.
is when Sloane texts Rowan and says, I missed you today. I also realized I can't cook for shit without you. I don't think I'm a fully fledged adult after all.
Yeah, I thought that was
This is
sweet
really
too.
sweet.
I loved all of that. Yeah, the boobing boobily was one of my favorite quotes. But I have 2 other ones too. I loved when Rowan says to Sloane, "You're my friend. Maybe someday my best friend." I thought that was
too.
really sweet. And then she says to Rowan, I think this is on the phone cooking together. Sloane says, "I'm having fun," and he gasps theatrically, "No, you can't. That wasn't part of my plan." I thought that was really funny too.
I can
there's so
see
much good
Robbie
banter.
saying something
I know.
like that to you. Don't you dare, Whitney.
Yeah, don't,
Bryn Weaver
don't have
is
fun.
such a brilliant wordsmith.
Yeah, she
like
really
there's
is.
just great writing all around and things that stick out. It's very difficult to pick even 3 quotes.
I know, right? Well, I have 3 as my favorite quotes, and then I've given like 2 or 3 more in my other answers.
I did too. I did that. I was like, I'm just going to ease that one in here.
I think I have 5 or 6 total. So, what questions do you have at this point that you would like to see resolved with this book?
I have a question that leads into Leather and Lark.
Okay.
How did Lachlan know that there was a serial killer in the area with so little information?
Yeah.
I want to
had that
know
too.
if he had to do a cleanup there at some point.
I wrote one of those that as one of my questions too, because I remember that Leather and Lark, they have that, his boss has that huge computer system.
Right.
And so I am assuming that
Yeah.
is, but I don't know what those computers are connected
Because
to.
even
You know what
Rowan
I mean?
says, he's like, how, none of these things, like Francis is a disorganized killer, obviously, right? So Rowan even says, like, how did Lachlan put this together?
Yeah.
And that's what made me wonder if
Yeah.
maybe he had been on cleanup duty. But I like the
might-
idea of the
he might
computers
have.
too, because that they have like a huge database of information.
Yeah, I mean, they
Yes.
use that in Leather and Lark. It's like the other dude that he talks to that's working for whatever the dude's name is.
Yeah.
Helps him out a couple of times
Yeah.
with that.
But I had that same question.
Yeah.
Like, how did he actually do that?
Mine was, do we know at this point, because you know how I miss things when I'm reading things, do we know what drives Rowan to kill serial killers at this point?
I don't think so.
Like, what's his motivation?
I always thought maybe it was his dad.
I mean, that
That's
makes
all-
sense.
That's all we know about
Yeah.
his background.
Yeah.
Is his mom died when they were very young. Their dad was abusive, and they killed him and left to come to
Right.
America.
Well, I have read this and I still don't remember, so maybe that'll end up
I
in my
don't-
biggest revelation eventually.
I know. I don't fully remember either.
Yeah.
But at this point, that's all we know
Okay.
about his background.
Well, I'm looking forward to learning about that again.
You know, one thing I just thought of, and it's what I was going to type in earlier when I was like, hold on, Mindy, I'm in a different spot in my notes. Did I just use like presumptive like energy in thinking that, because they say that Francis, like the house isn't decorated in the way that he would decorate. You're supposed to think it's like a psycho information, like situation where like the mom is there somewhere, right? Do they say that actually?
I think they do say something to that effect.
I had the same feeling, the same
Yeah.
assumption.
Because I thought
But I don't
somewhere they
remember
said for
fully.
sure that like they found her, but did they? I don't.
No,
but then I
they
reread it,
definitely
No, I don't.
didn't.
I think they offhandedly said. I really thought this was going to be more like a
Right.
psycho situation.
Right.
Yeah.
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 No, they alluded to it.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Maybe it's just a Bryn Weaver throwback to a movie she likes or something.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. I had a couple of questions as somebody, like you were saying, Mindy, I've read this book and I don't remember.
I can't believe I've read this more than you guys. Also,
I know,
but
right?
I've read, this is my 4th read, and it's been out for a year.
Yeah. It's a fairly new
I
release.
love this book.
I wanted to know who the tiny brunette with Lachlan is at the birthday lunch. When she sees Lachlan come in, he's got his arm around a tiny brunette. And I'm like, who's that bitch? I don't remember her. And I also wrote, who the F is Anna? I don't remember her that much from book 1. I remember not liking her. The
Well, yeah, 'cause
blonde
she
that
just
she
fucking
thinks
walked up and hugged
yes,
him.
that she thinks like, oh no, this might be his girlfriend. I'm like, I don't remember who this girl
I
is.
feel like
So-
later on we find out a little bit more.
I think
like
we
they're old
must.
friends or
I
something.
think that maybe
or-
she
Yeah.
was interested in him, but he wasn't interested in her.
Yeah, or
or
something
something.
like that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I do think it comes back up.
She is
I think it does,
very
too.
like kind to Sloane though, and doesn't treat her like who the fuck are you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was really nice.
She's not trying to be a Sloane.
So what are you looking forward to? I know, Mindy, you said you're looking forward to your questions being answered.
Also, I think I would love to see Rowan finally get to live out his sexual fantasies with Sloane.
I know, right? In
Yeah.
real life.
Yep.
For
Just stop
IRL.
getting boners and get it on.
You need to keep getting
We'll
boners.
keep getting the boners, but like
You use them.
Yes,
Rowan
yes.
definitely does not get erections; he gets boners.
That feels accurate.
yes, absolutely.
So I know that we're about to get to the accidental cannibalism, so I'm pretty thrilled about that.
Yeah.
It's like the highlight of this book, and it's so fucking funny.
I remember really enjoying that
Yes.
scene a lot. I wrote down, like, what are you looking forward to? I wrote down just more. Like, more of the banter, more of the flirting, more of the cuteness, getting to know each other, more of the cuteness of being unsure in their crushes with each other. Like, just the relationship developing. They're falling for each other, even though, you know, Sloane is trying really hard not to.
Yeah.
Like, I love all of that. Just more everything. More of it. I love it. And I know that this book delivers that.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to make sure that we talked about with this section of the book?
Not this time.
That's it for me.
Well, friends and listeners, we're going to be discussing chapters 10 through 12 next week. So make sure you read and come back and listen. Bye.
Like what you heard in this episode? Follow Our Nerdiest Thing on Instagram at instagram.com/Our Nerdiest Thing or Facebook at facebook.com/Our Nerdiest Thing. We love hearing from fellow nerds. Email us at ournerdiestthing@gmail.com.